Top 5 observations from the Baylor spring game on offense. Haven't done a Baylor-specific list in a while, so I thought I would, coming off the spring game. Number 5, they've got some position flex on the offensive line. Guys moved around and seemed comfortable in their spots and played well. Now, does that mean that they're going to be road graders necessarily? No, got to see somebody else. Like when somebody asked me the other day when I went, they said, how good do you think they are? I said, well, they can beat the Baylor defense. Like that's all we know is that they can score a little bit on the Baylor defense. But that's another top 5 for another day. But they do have some precision flex. Guys moved around, played different spots. It looks like they're pretty set on that top first starting 5 offensive linemen. Barrington brothers in there, Elijah Ellis. Looks like they are getting concrete there, which is good. But I think that's a positive that they do have some guys that can play a couple different positions.
Yeah, I mean, they had to replace a lot of starts and a lot of experience. And, you know, probably a guy in Connor Galvin who at worst will be an undrafted free agent. You know, we'll see on Khalil Keith. I'm sure he'll get a look of some sort. But you'll have at least a couple of guys, if not 3 or 4, playing in some league of some sort next year most likely. So, yeah, they lost some talent, but I don't think that they were so good last year that you know, it was irreplaceable. I mean, for having all of those guys returning, it didn't appear that way, like they were as dominant as they should have been. So, yeah, I definitely think there's room for growth and to be better there despite all of the changes, and I was very optimistic about that group. They got to keep putting in work, obviously. They're not a finished product or anywhere close to that, but just in terms of overall position groups, I think they'd have to be like top 3 bright spots.
Yeah.
Along with receivers and probably secondary tight ends, that whole grouping.
I wish I could ask Mateos, and we will at some point, was the offensive line just kind of there, or was that because they couldn't throw the ball? And so that put more pressure on the running game, or was it because they had so many issues at running back other than Richard Reese having to play immediately as a true freshman?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of guys that were fat and happy, obviously, last year. There was some of that all over the team, and I think that's finally been rooted out. So, yeah, that should only bode well. But, yeah, the O-line has some promise for sure.
Yeah. Number 4, saw some slant routes. We didn't see a lot of those last year, and they've got some receivers, Josh Cameron there among them, that are guys who are built like that. They've got good tight ends, and we're talking about that in a second, but did not see a lot of those over-the-middle routes. I think part of it was Blake Shapen wasn't all that confident throwing them, and you know,
it also takes the wide receiver getting a little separation too.
But to the tight ends point, though, last year, you know, if you think about the TCU game, the throw, I guess maybe it was more of a just kind of a crossing route, but than an actual pure just slant. But those crossing and slant routes, if you think about the TCU game at the end, what was the route that he could have thrown to Ben Sims that would have ended the game?
To me, it was like just right there in front of him.
But I mean, that's the route. I mean, so it's thrown over the middle of the field. They're challenging that part of the field where they do have some guys who can do some things. And I think that's another positive I saw that, hey, you know what? Let's get back to doing this, because they were not really good at it last year.
One of the slants that I remember was the one to Johnson, the kid from Arkansas. That was it was like a 4th and something, and he made it down near the ground. But it was neat to see them make that completion.
Yeah. Number 3, jury is still out for me at wide receiver. Myra Baldwin's really good. I think they're going to be okay at some spots, but outside of that, I don't know if they have the right guys yet. And part of that is, you know, going through quarterbacks. Spring games are hard to tell. Monterey Baldwin is certainly a guy who is dynamic and can make a ton of plays. But who is, you know, do they have a guy that can go get, you know, 9 catches in a game and control and move the chains for him? I don't know. I don't know. Like Monterey Baldwin, I don't really think he's that guy. I think he's the spark plug, like he got behind the defense and here's a big play that ignites the offense. But do they have somebody that, when they need to move the chains, can do it 6, 7, 8, 9 times in a game?
I think they probably do at tight end.
Yeah.
Not a wide receiver. Keytron Jackson, I mean, there's you know, a lot to like based on what we heard this spring and a little bit of what we saw on Saturday. But I'm definitely not making a final determination on him based off of a spring game. Maybe he's still got that potential. But, yeah, I mean, they don't have an alpha dog. Monterey Baldwin would be the closest to that, and he's not nearly big enough or sturdy enough as of right now to be that guy catching 8 balls a week for 12 games. I mean, if he can do that, then it's one of the great physical transformations in college football off seasons in present day, because he's just not built like that. But he's dynamic. I think Cameron Bonner's really intriguing, but not necessarily as a pure receiver. Like when they kind of throw him in the backfield for a carry or two.
Jet sweep.
Yeah, like I think he's intriguing in that way, but it seems like they just got a bunch of guys that are still figuring it out. And is there any diamonds in the rough, or are they all just some nice regular jewels? That remains to be seen, because they are still somewhat young. I mean, they're not super senior laden. So, yeah, jury is still out, like you said, at wide receiver. I wouldn't be shocked to see them add another body, would you? Or I don't know what the numbers are, though. Yeah. But I also think it would have to be somebody who's like a guy who's started for like 3 years and is now jumping in the portal for his last go-around.
Someone who needs to have 80 to 100 catches in his
somebody
career.
Proven, but nobody young.
They need somebody who's been dominant in like playing for Charlotte. And wants to play, at the Power 5 level to prove, that's what they need.
Okay.
Number 2, tons of depth at running back and tight end. They're just lousy with tight. I mean, I say that in a way, but like they've got so many tight ends, so many running backs. They can really do that, and that's great for this offense, because that's what it's about. It's about those two positions are really key in it. So it's great that they have the depth that they want there.
Roberts, Dabney, and Kelsey Johnson at tight end, correct?
Yeah. And Dabney didn't look any worse the wear after the injury that ended his season.
Roberts had 5 catches.
Yeah, Roberts had 5 catches. We've seen Kelsey Johnson do some things already. And then the running backs, I didn't, 1 to 5, honestly, like even with Jordan Jenkins in there, I didn't see any kind of real thing that would make me concerned at all when you've got Richard Reese and Dominic Richardson and Quaylon Jones and Bryson Washington and Jordan Jenkins. They are plenty deep.
Jenkins got a carry or two. It was good to see that.
And so if he's back and healthy and can help them, I think he's got a skill set for that offense. If it matches up, we'll see if he develops. But that position, that's probably the best news you can come out of that, is they have depth there that can overcome, just the attrition of a season, missing a game or two here, where if they have a guy get hurt at these two positions, they don't have to go, okay, well, what are we going to do this week? We don't know.
Yeah, Roberts helps sew that up, but if they have a couple of injuries, they're going to be leaning on young guys again. That room on paper, though, looks really good, and they do have at least 3 or 4 options, young guy-wise, that maybe we'll see sprinkled in as well as they try to, give them a little bit of seasoning before, the bright lights are fully on them. Guys like Hawkins Polley and Matthew Klopfenstein and Cody Mladenka, guys like that. But, yeah, as far as their starting trio, so to speak, of tight ends, any of them could start. Roberts, Dabney, or Johnson. I feel really great about those guys and expect a ton out of them. Running backs look good, as you mentioned. I'm still curious, like where does a Jordan Jenkins fit in the big picture ultimately? Is he going to make an impact at some point this year? Because now he's almost like he's further down the depth chart just because they brought in guys. To where they now have 4 solid potential starters. Given the week or the game or the health or whatever, but 4 is better than 1, which is basically what they had most of last year. So yeah, you got to love the changes at both those positions depth wise.
Yep. And number 1, quarterback race will remain interesting. Like I said at the beginning of the show, if you weren't here and watching, but I do think that this is something that will continue to develop. And what's true April 22nd in the spring game, October 22nd may not be the same exact thing. And they just need to kind of let this, continue to mature and find out what they really have in both these guys. But neither of them did anything so great that I would say, oh my gosh, this. And neither of them did anything so bad that I thought was...
because of that leads to people wanting the backup. Because as Baylor's been a backup quarterback, Zeno, Chapin, remember? And then even last year, golly, I forgot. But I think that leads to
Kerry Bohannon last year, even though he wasn't on the roster anymore.
Well,
Kyron Drones,
Kyron Drones, it's like they haven't had the alpha since the days of RG3, Bryce Petty, And then, of course, Seth Russell. And maybe I forgot somebody in there. I know Sic'Em was good. But
Zach Smith.
Zach Smith was good, and then he transferred because he was replaced.
He was a good player.
He was
fine.
Player.
He wasn't
he was fine. He would be the starter without question, right? Without a doubt, he would be the starter on this team.
I don't know.
Yeah. Zach Smith ahead of those two?
What did he do that was he was a good player, don't get me wrong. I don't think he was like a star, though, or anything.
Well, he ended up playing a lot at Tulsa, and I know Tulsa's not Baylor in the Big 12.
I'm not trying to knock him either.
Put it this way, I bet they'd love to have that in the conversation.
I'm saying he doesn't belong in the same vein as Bryce Petty and Seth Russell and a number of those other guys.
I don't think I brought up Zach Smith, did I?
You did.
I was naming quarterbacks that played the last few years.
Yeah, but okay. No, Seth was the last one that was the
Charlie
was really a fantastic. Like Seth Russell, and this is real. It's really a bummer about him with his injuries was. And I don't know what he would have done later on, but he was a fantastic college quarterback.
Oh, my God.
He was.
And probably,
The problem is that we're closing in the 10-year anniversary of when he last played.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like 2016, and we're in 2023, so we're not that far away. But, yeah, I mean, if they name a guy and it's Sawyer Robertson, I think that would be the big shock. I think if they do name a guy, it'll probably be Sic'Em. But, yeah, certainly not going to take our eyes off of what's a very much still developing situation.
And that answer could come down tonight or anytime in the next few days as, again, the transfer portal, remember, ends on April the 30th, which is on Sunday. All right, Emory.